Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining me tonight with our presentation, Emotional Growth. Here I am just organizing my agenda and the different handouts that I have for you tonight. And before we start, I want to thank you again for being with us here tonight. As every Thursday at 8, we are in a live session. We want you to be part of it. Please make sure that you have your chat working and that you can say your questions, your opinions, you can ask, you can participate of this emotional growth presentation. Also remember that this is the time that you get your special hot drink. I got my decaf coffee like every single night because that's what I have, but sometimes a hot chocolate tea will do. Also, I want to remind you that we are uploading new articles. We have this week's new article at the Crossroad, an amazing article talking about choices and when it's time to make decisions. And I invite you all to stop by our site and read it and share with your friends and your relatives. It is a great opportunity for you to invite them over to join us at Emotional Café every Thursday at 8. And also, I wanted you to know that we're going to be sending the monthly bulletin very soon, so it'll be ready. Please make sure that you when you get the email, you activate the link that tells us that you would like us to send it to you, so it won't go to your spam section in your emails. So I guess those are the reminders for tonight. And let's talk about emotional growth. And let me tell you that it's one of my favorite topics, and you might wonder why. And the truth is that to me, emotional growth, it's opening the door to looking at our lives from a magnifying glass and actually making adjustments and changes. And it's like moving forward to be able to give ourselves the life we want. Sometimes we don't understand what's going on with us. We don't understand why we don't achieve more. We don't understand why the things that we once dream of, we're not getting them. But at the same time, we feel that in our personal lives, we're having issues and we don't really quite understand what's going on. Well, let me tell you this. With emotional growth, the presentation that I'm going to be having with you for you tonight, sharing this topic, will be very eye-opening because it's a special inner call that we all get to have. And it's that moment in time when we look at ourselves and we say, okay, I need to change. Something needs to change. I don't know what it is, but one thing I know for sure, it cannot go on the way it is. And that's when we start growing. That's when we boost ourselves and push ourselves to the limit and continue moving forward. But we achieve different levels because we realize that changes needs to be made, and we stop blaming everybody else or expecting someone else to do it instead of us, but we start assuming our own responsibility. Now, what is growth? It is important when we're talking about emotional growth that we have a clear understanding of what growing means and what it implies when we say growth. Because, the word kind of give it away, emotional, so we're kind of talking about emotions, but also growth. So people immediately think of growing up, like when we're kids and we are growing up. Well, growth, the word means increase. It means that somehow we're getting something is getting bigger, something's getting increased. It can be the size, it can be the value, it can be the strength, it can be the number. It doesn't matter, but it implies that something is adding, it's increasing, it's becoming larger, it's becoming bigger. It refers to a positive change in size or in maturation, often over a period of time. Often over a period of time. That means that it doesn't happen overnight. That means that it doesn't happen from one moment to the other. It takes time. It's a process that will imply positive change. It also refers to the development from something lower or simpler to something higher or in a more complex form. So all these are definitions of growth. Also, we relate growth to the terms of evolution, being mature, and the result of growing, developing into another form. All these are definitions of what the word growth means. And if we think about the term and we apply it to the emotional level, it pretty much implies the same. Not only that we become bigger, but rather than that, it implies that we're going to be changing over a period of time, and that we're going to be from the way that we are now, we're going to be shaping into a different form, and hopefully it'll be for the best. And that's what growth on the emotional level really means. Now, when I was preparing this presentation for you, I was surprised to find that both Yale and Stanford universities have made some research trying to evaluate the impact of emotions and feelings on success. And it is just amazing. But can you believe this? Listen to this. They have said that 20%, in order to be successful, 20% depends on our academic background, our academic education, our academic knowledge, okay? And the 80% depends on our emotional health. I'm gonna say that again. Success depends 20% on your academic preparation, your education, what you have accomplished in terms of knowledge. And 80% depends on a healthy emotional development, your emotional health. And you might say, wow, how can that be? And don't get me wrong, because I don't want you to go out and say, Xiomara was saying that we shouldn't go to college, or Xiomara was saying that it's not important to have an education, or Xiomara was saying that in order to be successful, all you need is emotional health. No, that's not what I'm saying. Your academic preparation is important, but when it's time for you to go and develop out there and succeed, 20% will be based on that preparation, on that academic, on that education that you have, and 80% of that success will depend on how you cope with your own emotions and your own feelings, and how you deal with someone else's emotions and feelings. In other words, your emotional health. How healthy your emotional health has developed. Also, it implies, when we're talking about emotional growth, it implies that we have full acceptance of who we are and our flaws and our shortcomings and our mistakes. We look at them from a different perspective, not just to be feeling sorry for ourselves. That's not the point. The point is to learn from them and to have the humility to learn from it. That's huge. Sometimes when I say humility, people tend to think that I mean that someone is going to come and take advantage of us, or that we're going to be weak. And that's not really what humility means. It means that we are humble enough to understand we're not perfect, to understand we've made mistakes, to understand we've made poor choices. But the most important thing is what we're going to do with that, to move on, to move forward, and to learn from those. Now, emotions can be a great strength. It can be an amazing benefit for us, or it can be a huge disadvantage. It can be a huge weakness. And it's up to us when we define how we're going to deal with our emotions, if we're going to use them to our benefit or if it's going to be a disadvantage for us. And it's amazing the kind of thing that emotions can do. Have you ever heard people saying that the way they felt made a mess of themselves? Sometimes we go through stuff that it just hits us so bad that we feel like we cannot function well. It has to do with the way we're coping with our emotions. It is important as human beings that we get to control the way we feel, that we get to be in control of our emotions and not the other way around. Not that emotions are being overwhelming us to a point that we cannot think clearly, that we cannot make appropriate decisions, because that is just not healthy. And I will believe that's what these studies at the University of Yale and Stanford were talking about. We all, when we're born with a set of basic emotions. And by the time that we're born, they're pretty much like instincts. There are 5 primary emotions that are the ones that we start developing. And as we grow older, these emotions that once were some sort of instincts will grow into more mature emotions that will depend on the reactions and the responses that we've had from our surroundings for us to relate to them. For instance, the first of these primary emotions is fear. We all at one point or another feel fear. And when we are little kids and we have some sort of negative response to fear, then somehow that's going to be our response in front of fear from that point on. Fear is linked to the sense of protection. So if you think about it, it can be a good thing, because if you're walking in a very isolated street and there's nobody around and it's really dark and you feel in your gut that something is just not right and you feel fear, it might be something that will help you to be safe. It might help you to get protection. It might help you to seek for help. So if you look at it from that perspective, fear can be something good. But if it gets to a point that every time they're going to make a decision, you're fearing their results to the point that you don't even want to try, then we have a problem. So it's the same thing. Fear is a total natural basic emotion, and we all have it and we all feel it, but it depends on how we use it to become a strength or become a weakness. Affection. Have you seen the babies when they are newborns, how they cry? And sometimes the mother said, I don't understand what's going on. I have already fed the baby, I had changed his diaper, I had given him something to eat, I have put him in his crib, and all of a sudden the baby's crying. What's wrong with this baby? Well, the baby wants to be in mom's arm. They want to be nurtured, they want to be pampered, they want to be rocked, they want to be loved. That's what the affection emotion is about. It's linked to that need of bonding and feeling loved and belonging. It's the one that links us to relationships. So it's also totally normal. Another emotion is sadness. And sadness is linked to the sense of removing ourselves from something that is hurting us, something that is causing us pain. So when we're sad, something is just not right. Something is causing us that pain. And it's just amazing how sometimes we are sad, but we want to hold on to whatever is making us feel that way. Because, as I said, it's linked to the sense of withdrawal. And sometimes it's just easier for us to hold on to whatever we feel as known. But sadness, it's something that can actually affect us in a very deep and negative way if we're not careful with that emotion. Anger. Anger is linked to the sense of defending ourselves, feeling exposed and feeling that we need to come up and defend ourselves, feeling attacked. So anger, sometimes we see people that are really, really, really angry and they're always defensive, and we go like, what's going on with that person? Why is that person so angry? Well, it has to do with a lot of pain behind and sometimes even fear. But what we do is like a mechanism of defense. We just react in a defensive way. And it's pretty much showing with our anger that we can take care of ourselves. Happiness is the other basic emotion, and it's linked to the joy of life. We all want to be happy. If you ask anybody around, they will all say, all I want is to be happy. And that's pretty much what most human beings wish in life, to accomplish that sense of joy and the joy of living and feeling happy, to the point that sometimes we get so confused and so lost that we start seeking happiness at the wrong places with the wrong people and doing the wrong things. So it's just a basic natural emotion that we are all born with. So I'm going to say them again: fear, affection, sadness, anger, and happiness. There's so many other emotions as well, but these are considered the primary ones because all the other ones are somehow related to these basic ones. Now, when we think about growing up and the term grown ups, we think about adults. But it is important that we know what exactly being an adult means. Because let me tell you this, not everybody with a chronological age is really an adult. Sometimes we see people that we just see them in an adult body and they have adult responsibilities, but they act like children. And there's huge differences between one and the other, and I want to be able to address them tonight. For instance, you are no longer a child, you're no longer a teenager, you reach some sort of stability. There's some specific social expectations. People are expecting you to do things such as going to college or moving away from home, getting a roommate, or staying in college, what professional field you're going to pursue, if you're going to get married. Everybody's like having all these social expectations that are totally normal, and it is what everybody's supposed to be doing when they're adults, right? At the same time, we also have certain rights, certain privileges that you didn't get to have when you were younger. We always talk about, wow, when I get to be 21, and when he turns 21, what he's going to do, what she's going to do, because there's this sense of, okay, now I am an adult. Now I get to do things that are allowed for me to do that were not allowed before. At the same time, there are also consequences, because now the law will be having an impact in your life if you don't follow the social rules, to a point that there won't be any mercy, any considerations, because you are an adult and therefore you're going to have to pay consequences. So if you do something that is illegal, you might end up in jail, because that is the logical consequence to an adult of breaking the system or just doing what you're not supposed to do. Another thing is that we, as adults, we don't have that childish way to think. You know how kids, they want everything to themselves, everything spins around themselves, and they want to be first, they want to eat first, they want the toys, they want this, they want that. They have that selfishness in them that is totally natural when you're a kid. Well, when you grow up, you are supposed not to have that sense of being the center of the universe, but rather than that, you are supposed to interact socially with others, live in harmony, and think about the well-being of everybody, and have a sense of what's important to the majority of the people. Also, you're supposed to have more rational thoughts, to have some set of values and principles that guide you through life. And all these are supposed to be, the characteristics of being an adult. And yet, as I said before, sometimes we have adults that they don't act like such. They are more like grown kids instead of adults, and it's such a shame. I know these people, and I've seen a lot, and I'm sure you have too. This is important to know about emotional growth. Why? Because if you have someone like this in your family, or as a friend, or maybe you work with someone that it's supposed to be an adult but it's acting like a child, maybe you think, there's got to be something wrong with this person. But as you learn more about emotional growth, you'll be able to understand what happened to this kind of of people and why they're acting the way they are. And just in case that you tune in now, I remind you that you can ask your questions, use the chat, feel free to ask, and I will be trying to answer your questions as you share them with us. Now, sometimes we feel stuck. There's some people I work with that sometimes they come to work with me and they said, Xiomara, I feel stuck. I feel that I have graduated from college, or that I have a degree, or that I have a good job, but somehow I don't feel satisfied with my life. I feel stuck. This is what is called emotional stagnation, and it is very common in some people. And I want to be able to share with you where this stagnation comes from. So you know that sometimes when we have people that are acting like that, it's not because they want to annoy you. It's not because they want to do something to bother you, or because they just don't care. It's actually because sometimes they have come from these different reasons that I'm going to share with you now, that have had such a negative impact in their emotional growth that therefore they are suffering from what is called emotional stagnation. The first one is the affective rejection, when we've been rejected. And again, it is just amazing to understand that we as adults, we are the reflection of what we've learned when we were kids. I know some people don't like to hear that, and especially parents. This happens a lot. Sometimes when I had worked with people that I've had to had a family intervention and talk to the family about the situation, it's really hard on the family because the family feel judged. They feel that, oh, we did something wrong, you know, this person is seeking for help, it's because we did something wrong, and they get all defensive about it. When the truth is that it's not only about the family, and it is important for us to understand that we might have tried to do it the best possible way we tried, but still the person develops in a different way from what we were trying to provide this person with, to nurture this person with. So instead of just denying it or thinking I did wrong, in order to all move on, we need to know what's going on, and we need to accept that this happened. Affective rejection happens not only from the parents, but it can also happen from any important person near the child when they're growing up. It can even happen from his peers in school. The bullying and all that. The kids start thinking, the child start thinking, there's something wrong with me. I'm not loved. And it creates this huge emotional void that sometimes we try to feel with a relationship, or sometimes we try to stay in a relationship even though it's very harmful for us, and yet we don't move from there. Why do you think that happens? Because this person comes from affective rejection and therefore has this huge need to be loved, that whatever they find as love, even if it's very harmful for them, they will try to hold on to it. This happens a lot to those victims of domestic violence. They stay in a relationship risking their own lives. And sometimes we say, why? This is part of the reason why. Because they have that need that is so big, that is so huge, and they hold on so tight to whatever form of love they can possibly find. Another reason that causes emotional stagnation is overprotection. Sometimes we, as parents, tend to overprotect our kids. We don't want anything to happen to them, and it's totally natural and normal that we protect our kids. However, there's some occasions that we've seen parents that are so protective to the point that the kids cannot even go out and play. Simple play with other kids. Simple play in the backyard because, oh no, they're going to get sick. To a point that the message that the kids are getting, you are not capable. You are not capable. It's a way to know them. It's a way to tell them wrong speech, because if we don't let them naturally develop and see what they need to accomplish and do, they're always going to be expecting you to do it for them. So it is extremely important that you take that into consideration. I have a question here in the chat, and it says, how can I know if I need to grow emotionally? Well, I'm going to go over some of the signs of this emotional stagnation. Let me finish with the reasons why we get stuck emotionally, and then I'm going to move right away to that question. I have actually two questions, and I'm going to answer them right now. Just let me finish this idea so you actually get it, okay? So we have affective rejection, we got overprotection, and we also got physical and emotional abandonment. Sorry. Physical and emotional abandonment, it comes from not having appropriate role models when we're growing up. It might be that we were abandoned by our parents, maybe one of them that was really important. Sometimes it happens with grandparents as well. And again, what the child perceives is abandonment. That's how they feel it. So it's a sort of rejection, but not directly. They just don't feel that love because they didn't have it, but they also didn't get to have the appropriate role model showing them how to grow into a mature person, how adults behave, and therefore they didn't have that to learn from. So that is also another cause of emotional stagnation. And the last one, and this one is really curious one. It's about some people having to assume tough responsibilities at a very early age. That means that sometimes the father dies or the mother dies, and then the older kid gets to go and work, and they get to start growing into responsibilities. And we say, oh, look at that kid, he's so mature, because we see him doing things that he shouldn't be doing because he's just a kid, and usually things that are adults are the adults that do it, and yet he or she is doing it. But what happens? By assuming these responsibilities, this person just starts withdrawing from his own emotions, starts not coping with them because he cannot recognize them, because it's so busy assuming these responsibilities that therefore they are not coping with themselves, and they cannot identify what's happening to them. So they grow older, they get more responsibilities, but yet their emotions are at such a basic level that they cannot even name them or identify them and even cope with them appropriately. So these are the reasons that basically we get emotionally stuck. Now, going to the question, how can I know if I need to grow emotionally? There are certain signs that tells you that you are suffering from emotional stagnation or that you're emotionally stuck. These are the signs, and I hope these answer your question. The first one is insecurity. You feel insecure about things that you need to do. And let me tell you this, because sometimes we think it's only about making decisions. There are people that are so insecure to what they're going to wear, to where they're going to go, what food they're going to eat, what they're going to buy, if they should take the job, if they should not take the job, if they should change jobs. And for everything, it's such a struggle that it's not clear for them what to do. In some occasions, in some cases, they even have to ask someone else what they think in order to feel pushed towards a decision, in order to know which way to go. So insecurity might be one of the signs that you can keep an eye for. Another one, anxiety. High levels of anxiety. Usually when you feel very anxious about things, if you look at it, you are not fully on the present. Usually you are holding on to the past or already thinking about the future that is not here yet. So when those level of anxieties are really high, in some cases you don't even know why you feel anxious. That's a sign, because when you don't know what you're feeling anxious about and why you're feeling the way you're feeling, there's something that is there, but the fact that you're not identifying it, you're not recognizing it, tells you that something is just not right. Emotionally, you are not being as healthy as possible in order to identify and be able to move on, be able to cope with that. Another sign is selfishness. When you start having this sense of everything happening to you, if you go to a place and there's people laughing and all of a sudden you look at them and they look at you and you're thinking, oh, they're laughing at me, or they're laughing at my clothes, or this person doesn't like me, or this person did this because of me. That sense of it's happening only to me in the selfishness way, it's a sign of being emotionally stuck, suffering from emotional stagnation. And another one is low self-esteem. Sometimes we think that a person with low self-esteem will be the person crawling on the floor, or not dressing well, or not having friends. And as a matter of fact, you can have all that, you can have a great job, you can have resources, you can have lots of friends, and you can still be a person with a very low self-esteem. Sometimes we disguise our self-esteem behind pride and being arrogant, and we go wondering and we feel like we are better than everybody else, but the truth is that that's also a sign of low self-esteem. So these are some of the signs that you can see. Not as a sign, but I can also say that in my experience, I've seen other ways that tell me that someone is suffering from emotional stagnation. Being so fearful about moving on and adjusting to changes, that's a way to refuse to grow. And sometimes people ask, emotional growth, why is it so painful? Why it hurts so much? Let me tell you this, it only hurts when we refuse to grow. That's what makes it hurt. That's what makes it painful. When you are reluctant to make the changes that you need to make in order to be able to grow, in order to be able to do better. And another sign is when you're always interacting in conflictive relationships. If you realize that there's always conflict in your relationships, that somehow you're not getting along so well with everybody, that might be a sign that you need to grow. That might be a sign that something needs to be done. And again, we cannot change the other person. We can only change ourselves. So that might be, that can also be, something that tells you that you really need to make changes. Okay, I'm trying to see. I have another question here. Allow me to see. Let's see, because it's coming in and I haven't seen it. Okay, well, just keep asking your questions and I hope I answer yours. Okay, now, emotional intelligence. Let's talk a little bit about emotional intelligence. And you might say, isn't it the same than emotional growth? No. But the emotional intelligence is a result of growing emotionally. So when you are growing emotionally, then you develop the emotional intelligence that is so important. And I even have here a little handout. I don't know if you guys can see it. No, probably it's too bright, but I'm gonna share it with you. What is emotional intelligence? It's the ability to identify, use, understand, and manage emotions. But this is the important thing. Not only my own emotions, but also someone else's emotions, the other people's emotions. So when we're talking about emotional intelligence, it implies identifying, using, understanding and managing those emotions, both mine and others. That's why it's so important to develop this emotional intelligence. Also, it implies to be able to control the emotional reactions. You know how sometimes we just tend to react? The person that goes developing emotional intelligence, they just don't simply react. They think first. They make that pause. They fastly realize what's going on, and they're able to cope. They really know what's going on with themselves. But also, when they see it in front of them, when someone else is reacting, they know, they can tell what's going on, and they can immediately manage the situation in order to cope with the conflict that might arise and help the other person with their emotions as well. So that's an incredible trait to have. Also, emotional intelligence means the capacity to feel, understand, and modify the mood swings. You know how we all have mood swings, and sometimes we feel very happy, and then we think of something and we become nostalgic, and all of a sudden we're not happy anymore and we're feeling a little sad. Well, the person that has been developing their emotional intelligence as a result of their emotional growth, they can control their mood swings in a way that it doesn't have a negative impact on what they're doing. If they're at work, they can continue working. They can keep that from affecting their relationship with a significant other. So in other ways, if we summarize it, it's pretty much going beyond the cognitive skills in order to identify, use, understand, and manage our emotions and feelings as well as others. And why it is important? Because as we applied emotional intelligence, and I bet this is the 80% that universities of Yale and Stanford were referring to, we tend to respond in a more positive way when we're facing stress and tension. We rule our emotions towards our own benefit to a way that it has a positive impact in what we're doing or developing. We get to learn how to use our emotions, and we get to maximize, therefore, our professional performance. So that's why sometimes you see that when you're going to go and apply for a job, they have some sort of evaluation. And if you think about it, some of those evaluations have nothing to do with the field that you will be actually working at, but it has to do with a lot of conflict resolution and stating some situations just to see how you will respond to those and how you will deal with them. That's the way that they evaluate your emotional intelligence. Now, some characteristics and traits of emotional intelligence. Let me share those with you. The person that is emotionally intelligent has the capacity to motivate themselves. When you find yourself motivating yourself, that you don't need the motivation to come from someone else or from an external source, then that's good. That shows that you are implementing your emotional intelligence, because you are being able to motivate yourself, to push yourself, to boost yourself, and you don't need something else to come and help you do it. Also, your awareness of self and the emotions that you're feeling, and you're going through whatever it is that you're feeling, that awareness of how you're feeling and how this is affecting you, it's huge sign of emotional intelligence. The sociability, the capacity to socialize and be part of a teamwork, that's highly important. Why? Because imagine if you're one of those people that can only work by yourself. So you're working in an office, but you need to be isolated. You don't want to work with anybody. That's not quite useful, and it might cause some troubles at work. But people love when you have that skill to be conflict solution oriented and that you're trying to be part of the solution instead of the problem, that is huge, and that is a huge sign of emotional intelligence. Also, the high level of tolerance when facing pressure and frustration. How to manage frustration and pressure. We all experience this. At one point or another, we feel so frustrated or we feel so much pressure that we don't feel we can take it anymore. And by managing this, having a high level of tolerance is a way to show that we have been nurturing that emotional intelligence we need. Also, the empathy and sense of harmony when you are with more people, that is also very important, because again, it's not only about you. You're not alone in this world, so just feeling that you're part of a whole really helps. But some people cannot do it, even if you tell them they don't have the capacity, because again, they have not gotten to that point of emotional intelligence. I use the term raw. They have a raw intelligence versus a emotional intelligence. Now, the most important life challenges, and this is really interesting because the most important life challenges are those challenges that even people with the highest IQ scores can fail. And I'm going to tell you what those 5 most important life challenges are. Number 1, facing dangers. The capacity to face a danger. Let me tell you something. Danger is danger. And you can have the highest IQ ever, and yet when it comes to danger, if you don't use your emotional intelligence, you're in trouble, my friend. You really are. So it has nothing to do with how intelligent you can be and all the cognitive skills that you might have. It is extremely important to know how to face danger, how to cope with our reaction when we are facing a danger ahead of us. Number 2, important losses. Sometimes when I say important losses or painful losses, when you're losing something dearly, people tend to think that I'm talking about losing someone you love. And it's not only about the people you love. There are important losses we can go through, like people losing a business. It really, really hurts to a point that you can go into a severe depression. What about losing a property, losing your home, losing a job, if that's the job you depend on and you have no idea what else you're gonna do? And let's imagine that you are emotionally stuck and all of a sudden you lose your job. You don't even think clearly how you're gonna be able to move on. Losing a vehicle, even losing a pet. I've known people that losing a pet has caused so much pain that it's hard for them to move on. And I can totally relate to that. I mean, I have a cat and I love my cat and I don't imagine my life without my cat. So we love pets as if they were people. So these are important losses. And any of this, it has nothing to do with your cognitive skills, with your academic preparation, with how many books you've read. It has to do with emotional intelligence and how you are going to identify your emotions and how you're going to manage them, how you're going to cope with them. The third most important life challenge is perseverance when failing. Being able to get up. Continue trying, keep on pushing instead of giving up. Some people just give up and they're extremely intelligent, and you said, what happened? And they said, oh, I tried, but I failed, so I gave up on that. I'm not going to try it anymore. It's just not worthy. Seriously? Again, it has nothing to do with your cognitive skills. It has nothing to do with how intellectual you can be. It has to do with your emotional intelligence, being intelligent on coping with the emotions that are overwhelming you at that point. Number 4, relationships. Oh, that's a tough one, because it's not about you anymore. And then you see yourself in a relationship with someone else, and now you have to deal with your own emotions, but you also have to consider that other person's feelings and emotions. How am I going to cope with their emotions if I don't even know how to cope with mine? And that's what you have to think about. So when it comes to a relationship and having a significant other, it's extremely important to be able to develop your emotional intelligence in order to be able to deal with the relationship and moving along with different cycles in a relationship and coping with your emotions and your significant other emotions as well. And finally, the number 5 most important life challenge is starting and raising a family. That's the only thing you don't get to go to school to learn from. I mean, you cannot go to a university to learn how to become a parent. You can read lots of books, but I tell you this, with each child, it's a whole new experience. And you probably wonder, how come that my oldest one is this way and the youngest one is this other way? I mean, they have had the same education, they come from the same background, we have the same rules, and yet they are so different. Well, starting and raising a family, it's a huge life challenge. And if you don't know how to cope with your emotions, it can get overwhelming to a point that some people abandon their responsibilities and just disappear from the life of those they love. Again, it is these 5 important life challenges are challenges regardless of your IQ score, and it's one of any of these areas are areas in which even the most intellectual people can fail, because it's based on how you deal with them from the emotional intelligence perspective. Dangers, important losses, perseverance when failing, relationships, having a significant other, and starting and raising a family. Now, we've been talking about emotional stagnation, and we've been talking about the aftermath, the consequences of being stuck emotionally. But what about if you are growing? What are the signs of emotional health? Well, there are specific signs, and I am going to share them with you. So you know when you're working to grow up emotionally, you know what exactly it's supposed to be, that goal that you're going to be reaching. What exactly it's supposed to be, what you're going to be accomplishing through emotional health. And here they are. Number 1, positive attitude. Being positive about everything, about life, about the job, about the changes, about the family, about the challenges ahead of you. By thinking positive, you are showing emotional health. Why? Because if you're always pessimistic and always talking about fatal things and negative things, you just lose that sense of joy of life and that sense of accomplishment. When you're positive, they even say that the whole universe aligned in order for things to happen, just because you're positive. So keeping a positive attitude shows emotional health. It helps you maintain an emotional health. It makes you healthy up here. So it is extremely important to be positive. Self-discipline. That's another sign, important sign of being emotionally healthy. Imagine if you go and you're acting with no self-discipline and you just don't stop and think about the consequences before you act. I bet you're going to be in huge trouble. So self-discipline is important, to be able to make that pause and think ahead of the consequences before they even happen. The capacity to encourage yourself and others. That's another sign of emotional health. Being able to motivate yourself, but also be able to share your motivation towards others that may be in need. Show empathy. When someone's struggling, when someone's going through a hard time, that is a sign that you are emotionally healthy. When you are able to connect with them, when you're able to feel whatever they're feeling and be able to show that you care. Choose and act with hope. You hold on to hope. When you hold on to hope, mentally you become stable. Mentally you don't feel so desperate. Mentally you feel more at peace. So it is a sign of emotional health. Holding on to hope. Why do you always have to think about the worst possible scenario ever? think about hopeful outcomes. Be hopeful. Capacity to commit and respect commitments. Have you seen people that you go, oh, their relationships don't work, they're afraid to commit, and they run away from people? Well, there are people that have issues with commitment, but it has to do with their emotional health. When you are healthy in your mind, in your emotions, you are able to commit and you are able to respect that commitment, because it's not something that you just lightly shows. It's something that you've been thinking it through, and you know what you're doing, and you got that powerful perspective about that decision that you're making, or that choice that you're making, that this is what is right for you, and you have that conviction, and therefore you stick to that commitment because you are a committed person. You know what a commitment really means. The capacity to connect with yourself and with others. That's another sign of being emotionally healthy. You don't run away from what you're feeling. You don't run away from your emotions. You deal with them. You connect with yourself. You think about, why is this happening? Why am I feeling this way? What do I need to do? But you also connect with others. And you can relate to their feelings, but you can also understand why they are feeling the way they are. You can even suggest things that have been helping you to cope with your own emotions, because you are connected with them as well. Another sign is stability and confidence. You show stability, you show confidence in what you do, in who you are. You define yourself. You have a well-defined identity, but even if you don't have a well-defined identity, you define yourself, or you give permission to yourself to redefine yourself, to decide who you want to be, what you want to do. And that is huge, because some people, they're stuck because they feel they have to continue being who they've been. I have to share with you, and this is something that I usually say it at the beginning of the session, but I'm gonna say it now. And I know part of all this that I'm sharing with you are experiences that I have gone through it myself. I don't think I'll ever come and talk about a topic that I haven't had any kind of personal experience. I used to be so disorganized. I had no organization skills. And I used to be jealous and envying other people. And I said, oh, look at so-and-so. They're so organized. I wish I could be like that. And I was always whining. I wish I could be like that. But that was all I did. Until it got to a point that I said, why can't I be like that? If I think that is such a great skill to be organized, to be able to organize my work, to be able to organize myself, to be able to even organize my emotions, how come I cannot do it? And I decided to learn from the people. I started asking questions. I had a very close friend that she was so organized, and I asked her how she did it. And I remember her introducing me to organizing my finances and using envelopes and stuff. This was a whole new concept for me. But I started trying it, and I started making changes, and I started reading about organization and how to become more organized. I redefined myself. I wanted to be better in that area, and I knew that I was the only one that wasn't stopping myself. It's the same thing for you. To give yourself permission to redefine who you are, what you want to do. Maybe you've been working in an area that you no longer like it. You know what? It's okay. Just choose, decide, think, brainstorm, think out of the box, and give yourself permission to move on, to redefine yourself and create the best you that you could possibly create by becoming a better you. And this I tell you from my heart, because again, I know it's not the easy stuff, but I tell you, once you start doing this, you're opening the door to a life at its fullest, to feel happy, to feel joyful, to feel hopeful, to be emotionally healthy and feel better about yourself. And this is huge, I tell you, it's priceless. And finally, the assertive communication, being able to communicate. There are people that they talk and you understand something, and when you tell them what you understood, they said, that's not what I said. And you wondered, what were you saying? They don't even know how to express themselves. They don't even know how to communicate, how to transmit a message that they want to say, because they are so disconnected from their own emotions that they don't even know what exactly is it that they are feeling and that they want to share with you. So being able to communicate in an appropriate way, being able to communicate from your perspective, being able to respect how others feel, but be able to say, this is how I feel, and identify it and share it appropriately without just pushing everybody to the edge, but rather than that, being open to the responses that you have from people. That is also a huge sign of emotional health. Now, finally, I want to give you some recommendations on how to preserve your emotional health. I know some people that have been working with me. This is one of the reasons that they come. And I want to tell you, if that's your case tonight, if you've been working, you might be wondering, how do I know if I'm doing fine? How do I know if I'm on the right path? Well, from my perspective, there are specific things that can tell you that you're on the right path, and I'm going to tell you what they are, but I'm also going to tell you how to keep and take good care of those, because once you find your emotional growth and you want to hold on to it because you are at peace and you feel better, you don't want anything or anyone to steal that from you, make sure you take good care of your emotional health. These are some of the signs that you who has been working hard with yourself can keep an eye on in order to know that you're on the right track, in order to say to yourself, I'm doing fine, I'm gonna keep on doing this. Letting go on what it hurts you. That's huge. That means that you're finally realizing that you need to remove yourself from there. It might not mean that you want to do that, but it means that it hurts so bad that now you recognize it and you no longer want to continue being there. So that's a huge sign of growth. Start looking at your own mistakes and learning from it. Instead of talking about what others did and what they didn't do and what they were supposed to do and how they let you down, you look at your own mistakes, at the wrong things you did or the choices you've made, and you learn from them. You are able to look back and say, yeah, but I was acting inappropriately, or I was immature, or I was being selfish, in order to learn and move on. Also, when you find yourself that you're not whining and complaining about everything anymore like a little kid, that's a huge sign that it's working for you. So keep it up. When you find yourself happy about others' success, when you find that you're happy about your sister's marriage or about your friend's new job or about anything else that it's not actually linked to you directly, that it's not something happening directly to you, but you can still feel happy for others, that is also a great sign that you're growing. Your relationships become less conflictive because now you're not paying so much attention to what others do, but you're more into what you do and how to do it differently, and it's just great. Relationships start being less conflictive. With everybody, you start getting along in a different way, so that's also great. Also, you become more independent, and to me that means that you're not expecting that validation from this person or that other person, but you start validating yourself. You start being able to acknowledge and recognize your efforts and what you do good, and you feel proud of yourself instead of someone else coming and saying, I'm proud of you. So if you can recognize these signs in your life, you're doing great. Keep up the good job. Now, how can you maintain that emotional health that has been so hard for you to get? Well, positive thinking, nurture affection, all those who you love and that are around you. Have a hobby. Find something that you love to do. You need to do something you enjoy. Find it. If you haven't found it, if you haven't figured it out, you better do it, because it's going to be huge when you get to do things that you enjoy. Choose your fights. Don't go fighting for every little thing. I mean, it's just not even worth it to get upset about small things. Just pick your fights. Just don't sweat it. Don't sweat the simple stuff. Laugh. Laugh. I laugh. Listen, when I laugh, everybody laughs because I have learned to laugh. And sometimes when I'm feeling a little bit down, you know what I do? I go and get some of those cartoons that I used to love when I was a little kid, and I just play them and laugh. Just laugh. Laughter is considered medicine itself. So give yourself permission to laugh. Surround yourself with those things that make you feel great. Keep the stress and the toxicity aside, especially those coming from people. Just keep them away. Just keep your distance. Try to keep yourself healthy, okay? Do not hold on to the past. The past is gone. There's nothing you can do to change that. And please don't start living in the future, because the worst scenario, it's only in your mind. Nothing tells you that it's going to pan out the way you had imagined it. So just let go on the past and don't hold on to a future that is not even here. Live today, the now and the today. That's the only thing we have for sure. And finally, continue growing. Don't run away from growing because it's going to be painful. That's what really hurts. Keep on reading those books. Keep on hanging out with the positive people that have been your support system. Keep on calling that friend that every time that you guys share, you feel better about yourself. Keep on the growing path you've taken and don't give it up. Don't give up for anything or anybody, because you are the most important person and your emotional health is important, and it's your responsibility to keep it healthy. No one else is gonna do it for you. Well, that has been our topic tonight, emotional growth, one of my favorite ones. And I really hope you can join me Thursday next week. I would like to remind you that my sessions on Christmas Eve, December 24th, and New Year's Eve, December 31st, will be pre-recorded. But please email me, send us your comments. If you have any questions about next week's session, finding the balance in your life, or for our final session of the year, letting go, to let it go. So please join me. I hope you had a wonderful rest of the night, and thanks for being here with me, and I hope you enjoy the emotional growth presentation. See you next week.